the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. Learn about the most current IT security threats in ransomware, phishing, business email compromise, cybercrime tactics, cyber heist schemes, social engineering scams, as well as hints and tips from leading professionals to help you prevent hackers from penetrating your network and dropping ransomware or malware payloads. This podcast will arm you with the best info to defend your network against the latest cyber crimes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And now, here's your host, Craig Petronella.
Welcome to another PTG podcast. Today, it's just myself, Erin, and Blake. Today, Blake does not have his microphone, so we don't have his sexy voice, but it's still sexy enough. You'll be fine.
Yep. I was thinking you were going to forget to say my name here on this intro, but I'm also here.
No, I'm not the one that forgets. I remember you.
I was like, okay, my mic's muted. She doesn't know that I'm here.
It's just me today, guys. It's just me talking. What's that little voice in the background? I don't know.
The Lone Ranger.
I'm the Lone Ranger today. Oh, hi, Blake. There you are.
I'm here.
I think we have a really interesting topic today. So, Blake, do you want to tell our listeners what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the real reason behind cybersecurity problems in the United States.
Yes. What is it? Because here's the problem. Cybersecurity is a real problem. It is a huge problem. We've talked about the colonial pipeline before, but that's really one of the biggest, most impactful breaches that we've experienced here in the US. And the thing about it is that they weren't even really trying to mess with our critical infrastructure. According to the hackers, maybe they're lying, but I just thought that was interesting. They're just doing their thing. And then we're over here. My boyfriend was working for a company at the time and they ran out of gas and they knew they were going to run out of gas and they still had to go out on the job site, even though there was no gas anywhere. That's how it impacted my life. Not really, but it impacted my boyfriend's life.
The colonial pipeline was a big one, especially for the East Coast. It was more about supply chain disruption than anything. But of course, there's been bigger, in my opinion, breaches like Equifax and TransUnion because there were more users impacted. Just because there wasn't like a presence that was being felt, but the fact that these hackers got however many millions of social security numbers.
Yeah.
So that's pretty epic. So
it's huge. I think the colonial pipeline, it impacted a lot of people real time. I feel like you're right. There have been much bigger hacks, but I guess I was thinking more to critical infrastructure because there's also a new announcement today. Maybe it wasn't today, but this week, there's been a new announcement, a new renewal of warning against the potential possibility of Russia attacking critical infrastructure here in the US. So we all need to be on high alert, obviously. But that leads us down to the question, why is our cybersecurity so crappy anyway? What do you think, Blake?
I think we're just an easy target. We talked about in some of our podcasts, low-hanging fruit. I think the United States government is certainly some low-hanging fruit.
Why do you think that is, though? What missteps do you think the U.S. took in protecting our infrastructure?
Of course, there's been maybe missteps. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, it has a lot to do with, I think, personally, the digital push. Within the past 15 to 20 years, all businesses, for the most part, have been storing records digitally. They've been getting away from physical records. Everything is going to the cloud. Everything is going digital. Every single employee in a company, that works at a company has access to a digital device versus maybe 15 or 20 years ago. Maybe there was one computer, one system administrative computer per office, and there wasn't a cell phone, smartphones. But yeah, I just think the digital push, we just weren't ready for it. That's just my thing. We just can't keep up with it. There's so much business that's going on, especially on the internet. We can't keep up with the amount of transactions, the amount of company records that we just can't keep up with. So I don't know if it was a misstep, but certainly it's the cat and mouse game.
I think, though, that you said you don't see necessarily where a misstep has been, but I think you actually kind of outlined a misstep without realizing it because we did push to go digital, and I understand why. But at the same time, I think one of the problems that we had was the fact that we relied on promises from the supply chain, from the defense industrial base. And it wasn't even trust, but verify. It was just trust. I've said this before, but I kind of think of NIST 800-171 and DFARS requirements previously as being like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, you got your cybersecurity up to code. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to believe you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, you totally do. Right. That's kind of the impression that I get from it. And I think that was a big problem because America is built on the principle of freedom. And I think that sometimes that gets taken a little far for certain things because freedom is great, but we also need to think about security. It's like the more free you are, the less security that you have. So yeah, you're free to run your business as you want. But when it gets to the point that national secrets are being stolen, there's a problem. I know it's not the cheapest thing in the world to get all of your cybersecurity up to date, but what's the cost going to be if we don't secure our supply chain?
I think that's the multi-million-dollar question to the government that's handing out the multi-million-dollar grant. But yeah, now that you bring up the NIST 800-171, DFARS regulations, I just don't understand how that happened. I don't understand why there wasn't more done, especially when millions and millions of dollars of rewards are being handed out. I just don't understand how you could trust corporate business or big Fortune 500 or whatever these awardees are. I just don't understand how you could hand out those large sums of money without some actual evidence supporting it.
But at the same time, though, think about people that we've talked to on some of our past prospects and things like that did not end up going forward with protecting their data. The reason that they don't do it is because they don't think that they're going to need it. The problem is that, okay, this is a potential threat, but it has not actually impacted them personally that they're aware of. So why are they going to spend millions, billions of dollars to secure their supply chain if it's just a potential threat? I don't know. I just kind of get this feeling too that hackers and malicious malware and ransomware, I feel like the pace of increasing sophistication just really ramped up to a point where it was all of a sudden like, oh crap, what have we done? Or what have we not done? This is getting out of hand. And it got out of hand before they realized it was going to get out of hand. And now, honestly, like, it's just a mess. I look at it and I'm like, how are we going to secure ourselves? I don't know. I don't know how we're going to secure ourselves. Billions of dollars are being exfiltrated annually by foreign actors, right? Billions of dollars worth of data and information, national secrets, it's all being stolen. So wouldn't it make sense to instead use those billions of dollars? Actually, no, I think it's trillions of dollars. But anyway, it's a heck of a lot of money. So why not use that money instead to secure your supply chain? I think that would be huge. I think that they need to grant people money for it, grant businesses money for it. But at the same time, because I think they did try that a bit with NIST, some of the costs were built into the contract, but they need to make sure that that money is going towards what they say it's going towards, because clearly they did not use the money that they were given in the contracts to fortify their cybersecurity defenses. That's blaringly obvious. Glaringly obvious? One of those. Both of those could work.
I also feel like we're conditioned for the worst case scenario. But when you were talking, I was really thinking a lot about healthcare industry, and how everybody strives in America to have health insurance, not because you want to use it, but because you hope you don't have to use it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
If we weren't conditioned in that manner to say, hey, look, you're driving a car, you're doing risky activity every single day, you're running or, I don't know, swimming, or think about how many people get in accidents on a daily basis.
Just living.
Yeah, just accidentally. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who've accidentally broken a bone. And that's when your health insurance comes in. Just because you have health insurance and you have to use health insurance doesn't mean that you're not going to have to. So going back to the DFARS, what's the holdup? I don't understand. If we're conditioned to understand and we're conditioned to realize that accidents happen every single day just living, then why is it that we trust and rely so much on the perception of cybersecurity that doesn't exist? Why do we lean on that? Because that's a fictional thing. It's not real.
Exactly. No, I think that that's a really good point. I mean, the internet is not tangible necessarily. You can see it on your computer screen, but what is it? So I think that unlike car insurance, where you have your vehicle, you see accidents on the road all the time, or health insurance, you go visit people in the hospital, you can see the impact that it has. But it's almost like cybersecurity is more of an invisible thing. It's harder to see. That means that people probably think that, I don't know, maybe out of sight, out of mind kind of thing.
I think there's just such a lack of expertise in the field. We've talked about this before. Cybersecurity, I said this before, it's not sexy. You're not a doctor. You're not an airplane pilot. It's not something that kids go to school for or dream to be. Like, oh, I want to be an astronaut.
I want to be a cybersecurity expert.
I can't think of anybody who I know personally wanted to pursue cybersecurity. It's just like you're conditioned for it. And you end up in this field because you stumble upon it. And it takes a certain type of person to be successful in this industry. Me and Jonathan have talked about this before, but usually it's people, I know this sounds weird, but it's people that are overly analytical and the type of people that have an ever evolving mind. I think it's a mental disorder, the people that join this industry. I really do.
Okay. I think that we all have ADHD here at the company. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. I'm not an IT person. I'm not a technical person, but I find cybersecurity absolutely fascinating. I remember one of the first articles I wrote for Craig, I was like, this reads like a spy novel. This is so cool. It's not cool that it's happening. It's not cool that it's bad guys, but just learning about what the hackers did to the viruses and how they programmed them to do these just insidious acts to people on the computer. Not only does it encrypt all of your data and all of your files, but it also stays dormant on your computer. It's just sneak. They're smart. Lazy. Hackers are lazy, but they are pretty smart. And a lot of people just don't get cyber.
Soldiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people enter the armed forces, maybe because they feel like they don't fit in, or maybe that they're undecided about their future. So they enlist in the armed forces, the military, then they get conditioned to be a soldier. So that's what I think is the cybersecurity space. For instance, I always was kind of like the pivotal point between my family and friends and technology. Everybody was always saying, I don't know, I stood out as being the captain that would help you solve problems with cybersecurity, or not cybersecurity, technology. So for that reason, I just landed here. It seemed like it was just something that comes natural. I don't know if you can compare it to athletes, or it's the field where gifted minds thrive. And usually those gifted minds, it usually comes with a personality disorder, but we're all, for the most part, overachievers. That could be classified as a personality disorder. People that have analytical minds thrive in this industry, and those are the ones that hang out and stay in this industry.
Now, out of curiosity, do you think there's a difference between people that thrive in IT and people that thrive in cybersecurity? Like, do you think that there's a difference there? Because I know for me personally, I am way more interested in cybersecurity and the digital realm in general than I am just in IT. The thought of doing what you guys do, it just makes me cringe. But I'm super curious about what goes on the other side. And honestly, like, part of me kind of wishes I had studied cybersecurity, but they didn't have it really back when I went in college. It was more just IT stuff, which I'm not interested in so much.
Yeah. I think if we can compare it to sports, it's total opposite spectrum. We're not playing a sport here, but you have defensive-minded players on a sports team, and you have offensive-minded players on a sports team. And they all go towards the bigger picture of winning the game. So, of course, your personality has a lot to do with it, in my opinion. I'm more of an offensive strategist, more so than I am a defensive strategist. I think about how we can progress, how we can push, how I can excel, how I can stand apart, how I can be a leader, more so than how can I fortify and how can I secure the progress that we've made.
So you consider yourself to be more proactive as opposed to more reactive is kind of what I get from that, which makes a lot of sense to me.
And we've got people like Jonathan that are more reactive.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see both sides of the spectrum. And I like to think of myself as somebody that floats in between two because I can be reactive, but I do move in a proactive state.
I think that I'm more proactive too. I try to think about problems that can pop up. Okay, we're doing this activity. So what can go wrong? What can fall through the cracks? Where can this process break? That's why I'm so detailed. I'm a naturally disorganized person, but I learned at an early age that if I don't get my stuff together, I'm not going to make good grades. And I always liked making good grades. So I had to set up systems for myself. And I think that because of that experience, I'm actually able to help people become a little bit more organized and proactive, or at least I try to. It doesn't always work, but I agree. I agree with you. I think the big difference between IT and MSP, like managed service providers, is IT to me feels more reactive and MSP feels more proactive. And I think cybersecurity is definitely proactive. You can get reactive. We get a lot of reactive clients who did not necessarily set up their cybersecurity in the best way or didn't think about the impact that a lack of cybersecurity could have on their company. So we do have a lot of people that call and they're like, I've been hacked, I need help. But really, another thing I feel like I say all the time, but a half an ounce of prevention worth more than a half pound of cure.
Yeah. We had somebody that we were working with and putting together that we were trying to figure out if we were the right service provider for them. And ultimately, they ended up not choosing us because we were cybersecurity focused. And in my mind, I was like,
Really?
I just can't understand.
Wow.
If you hire a managed service provider and cybersecurity isn't a priority to them, you think you'd want to find somebody who goes down that rabbit hole backwards, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who is more in tune with cybersecurity and managed services is a secondary service to them versus cybersecurity. Because should you have let's just say, for example, you're running virtualization from your managed service provider, VMware, virtual machines, and these people are responsible for securing all of your cloud storage, all of your endpoints, all of your devices, all of your data.
Right.
You're not specialists in security. That's handing over to your home to your neighbor who you've never met. Or we were talking about even leaving a key. It's like a plague. People who have that house, they leave a key under a pot or they leave a key under a doormat. Those are the most common places that somebody's going to look to get into your house. But I can't understand why you would go to entrust your data with somebody who doesn't have cybersecurity background and somebody who doesn't have that defensive mentality, that fortification perspective on being a managed service provider.
That really doesn't make any sense. It does not compute. I don't understand it. And I don't mean to sound mean when I say this, but it's so mind-blowing. But that's very indicative of this topic that we're discussing right now. People just aren't thinking things through. They don't think things through because they're not proactive. They don't think ahead. It's very myopic. They look at what's in front of them. And what are you going to do?
I want to see more cybersecurity courses in school. I don't know if that's the thing. I've been out of school for a long time. But when I was going through high school, college, there wasn't a lot of cybersecurity courses. There wasn't much information out there. People think of your computer as the tap, like plumbing. You go to your faucet and you turn your faucet on and water comes out. But whenever you all of a sudden see leak, then you have a problem. They don't think about it from the same type of perspective that we've been conditioned to think about healthcare.
Right.
And it's better to be proactive than to be reactive. But I want to see cybersecurity courses for children, for younger kids. And I can't tell you how many times I've been walking through a store and I've seen a mom, or maybe on a flight, and a mom hands their kids over the iPad to play games or whatever, if they're playing games on an iPad, and they should be learning, in my opinion, rudimentary cybersecurity.
Absolutely. That's a great point, and actually kind of leads into something I was going to ask you too. On the podcast, I like that we discuss the problems, right? But even more than that, I guess because we are proactive, right? I like to also discuss solutions. So I was going to ask you, what do you think we could do here in the United States to improve our overall cybersecurity? And that might not be the only thing, but that's a really, really great point. Kids are on the computer now from as soon as they can look at something. They're on an iPad, they're on I guess probably not a computer, but definitely on an iPad. And if you're old enough to be on an iPad, you're right. You need to be able to, maybe not at 3 years old, you're not going to learn how to defend yourself against hackers. But at a very early age, it is a digital world now. And we do need to take it seriously.
Let me jump in. If your child is old enough to click on an application and run an application on the iPad, then they're likely old enough to click on a VPN application and turn on a VPN.
Yeah.
You click on the application, press the on button. There's some really user-friendly VPNs out there, especially before they do anything on the internet. If they want to browse the internet or anything at all. I can't think of what kids do on the internet these days. Maybe look at YouTube videos of PewDiePie, or maybe watch Mr. Beast videos. You're certainly young enough or certainly capable enough to run a VPN. You're going to browse to YouTube and watch YouTube videos or play games.
Watch unboxing videos. I don't understand that. Kids love that.
Sure. Yeah, or maybe a lot of kids that I know love to watch other people play games on the internet. It's like, oh, this person is playing Roblox, and they want to watch them play Roblox on the internet while they're not playing Roblox. So if you're certainly capable of searching something on the internet, you can certainly teach your child how to run a VPN. You can certainly tell your child the same way you said, hey, don't talk to strangers. You can certainly tell your child, hey, if you see anything weird on the computer or on your telephone or on my telephone or on my tablet, let me know. Or if you see a weird link and you're not sure what that link is, let me know, show me, or just don't click it. It's that simple. It's the same way you tell your child to not talk to strangers. Those are two immediate things that you can teach a child on how to at least condition them. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about turning your child into a cybersecurity specialist. We're talking about rudimentary cybersecurity practices that take the simplest amount of sophistication or even abilities to perform.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's another idea for a podcast, Blake. Maybe we should do a podcast on the top cybersecurity tips to teach your children as soon as they start learning how to click on links or apps. I think that that's a good idea.
Think about this. Now every child has a phone.
Yep.
Not only for convenience purposes, but for safety purposes. I don't remember what age I got a cell phone, but I think it's really common for kids as young as 9 or 10 years old to maybe even have a cell phone these days, because mom and dad wants to get a hold of them. Mom and dad wants to keep tabs on them. Mom and dad wants to know what's going on in their life and have a means to communicate with their child. At the same time that you're handing over a cell phone to your child, at the same time, you need to introduce the practices. Craig was talking about people just don't understand and they feel like they're relatively secure because they don't understand cybersecurity, and maybe negligence is a sense of protection in a way. If you don't know that you're doing something dangerous, then it doesn't feel dangerous. If you jump into the ocean of Brazil that is shark infested in Recife, Brazil, and you don't know that it's shark infested, but you jump in there anyways and start swimming and surfing or whatever, you don't know that you're putting yourself at danger because you don't realize that you're in the presence of danger.
It also kind of goes back to the point that we've made before, where it's so much easier to build in cybersecurity in the very beginning of your business. It's a lot hard to build in systems and processes after you already have a business. And I think that teaching your children cybersecurity is kind of the same thing. Like, why not start from the ground up? Why not start as early as possible if they're aware of the dangers that exist? And it could be really real world dangers that they could run into on the internet. So it's just a good idea to teach them safety. And I mean, why not start in kindergarten? We had computer classes where I'm old enough to where we played the original Oregon Trail, right? So why not, when you have your computer classes once a week, also teach little cybersecurity tips and tricks and things like that to keep them safe, especially teaching them about social engineering and things to look out for. That can help, because people that conduct social engineering hacks, they operate in the same way that real life sociopaths operate. So I feel like that kind of lesson could help them just from the very beginning, what to look out for, red flags, signals. If you get a message from your friend who's a native English speaker, but they don't sound like a native English speaker, then they're probably been hacked. So don't click on the link they sent you. Little things like that could really help them.
I love how you bring up social engineering, because that is the practice that needs some implementation on both sides. Because social engineering is a huge part of cybersecurity breaches. And I think in the last video or the last podcast that we did, some crazy statistic, like 90% of cybersecurity breaches involve social engineering.
Yeah.
So I think, I could be wrong on that stat. It's a really high number, but it needs to go on both sides. So you need to consider social engineering your children, your family, your friends. And we even joked about before we were talking, it was me and Greg or whoever, we were joking about the next book that Craig writes would be Cybersecurity for Children or something along those natures. I think that'd be awesome.
I think that's a fantastic idea. It might not necessarily fix what we're going through right now. Obviously, it's going to take time, but just the CMMC, the point of CMMC is to integrate cybersecurity into the core, into the culture of the company. So why not do that with children as well? So it's not just a separate thing. It's something that they're always constantly aware of because it's something that they're taught. I don't know why I've never thought about that before, Blake. That's brilliant and so helpful and so proactive also. So I agree, obviously, wholeheartedly. And then with that being said, what are some other things that you think the U.S. can / do to help improve our overall cybersecurity portfolio?
I think we've talked about this before in some of our podcasts, not entirely on this topic, but definitely more layers.
Yes.
Especially here at PTG, we have a 22-layer patented cybersecurity stack. You can always fortify. You can always fortify yourself further. Something that immediately comes to mind is, I don't know if you're on Instagram, and if we are, I don't think we're following each other, which is a shame. But I've been seeing on Instagram those memes, and it's like, don't let them know your next move. People that are doing things, but they're intentionally tricking people, and they do them in repetition. Have you seen that?
No.
I think it might be a TikTok trend or something, but there's a hip hop song and it's like, don't let them know your next move. But what they do is all these weird, tricky things, like somebody gets in the car door and they come out the other side of the car and then they get back in the car and then they come out the back, they crawl out the back of the car and then they pretend like they're going to shoot a basketball. Then they pass the, you know what I mean? They pass the basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It's intentional misdirection. And it goes along with the theme song. The answer to your question is continuing to fortify, continuing to seek excellence. Use those offensive strategies that I'm sure people in your industry, your corporation, people that you know, or maybe even your service providers. If you're working with an IT company, they may have people, offensive-minded cybersecurity talent there. Continue working with those individuals to continue to push the envelope, because the second that you stop pushing the envelope is the second that somebody's going to catch up to you. That's the same thing that we're starting to slowly get conditioned for, where phone manufacturers, Apple, Samsung, where providers that are putting out applications for your phone, they're always saying, hey, update your app, keep your app up to date, keep your iPhone, keep your Samsung phone up to date, keep all of your devices up to date. So that way you have the latest security vulnerabilities. And it's a plague of people that don't update it. It's a virus, it's huge pandemic.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And it goes along with what we were talking about before, because it's slightly inconvenient. And people are like, well, I've never updated it before, so why start now? Because you might not be safe in the future. That's why you should do it. And it might be a little bit inconvenient, but definitely worth it.
Seriously, how inconvenient is it for you to press a button and let your phone update itself?
It's not that inconvenient.
You can totally do it before you go to bed. You can totally do it on your lunch break when you're not using phone. You can set these to auto update nowadays.
Right. Exactly. People aren't aware. I think that's the biggest problem, right? People aren't aware and people think it's not going to happen to them. And I think people underestimate the amount of headache and trouble and even financial ruin. It can literally lead to financial ruin. And people just think it's the worst case scenario, but it's really not the worst case scenario. I can't remember what it is, but it's something like 85% of companies, small businesses that experience a breach go out of business within 5 years or 6 years, something absolutely crazy. And I think that one of the problems is it can be expensive to secure your business. So I do think that the government should really pour resources into helping businesses and individuals.
We also have right now, obviously with COVID and the resurgence, there is cdc.gov website where you can go on the cdc.gov website and see all the latest information about health protocols, the latest articles and releases and findings and ways to keep yourself healthy and to keep yourself safe. As far as I'm aware, there isn't something issued like that for cybersecurity from the government. Of course, there is a degree of some way of finding out that information, whether it's from the FCC or maybe even other websites. There's websites that indicate trust, such as Google, Yelp, Yahoo, Trustpilot, but there isn't really, in my opinion, a government mandated cybersecurity program that is implemented and rolled out to the public, fully adaptable en masse to end users. But if there is, I haven't heard of it. Of course, I'm talking about the FCC, and usually that deals with online fraud and things of that nature. But they really only issue warnings. They don't talk about proactive measures. They don't offer free cybersecurity courses. They don't act proactively. They act reactively.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And it's so true. A couple years ago when I was reading a book and it talked about the difference between being proactive and reactive. And I was like, wow, okay, that's a great way to put it. And I think about it a lot now. You can save yourself a lot of trouble. I know we use a CRM here at Petronella Tech. We just started using it recently. And when I first started doing the project management role, I know Blake and Jonathan got so sick of hearing me say, can you put it in here? I'm not going to say the name of what we use just because I don't feel comfortable doing that, and it's also irrelevant. But I would be like, cool, Blake, can you put that in our CRM? All right, great, BJ. Thanks for letting us know. Can you put that in the CRM? But it's the same kind of concept, right? Where it's about thinking ahead and being proactive, because I'm like, well, if we don't know what's going on, what we're all doing, then we're all going to look disorganized and we're going to miss things and things are going to fall through the cracks. And it's a pain. It can be a pain in the butt to be proactive sometimes, because you're like, am I just wasting your time? And times you might be, but at the same time, when you do need something and you can find it easily, it makes up for the amount of time that it takes to input it. And it is annoying. And I totally get it. But yeah, I think that being proactive is just extremely important. How much do you know, Blake, about Web 3.0, out of curiosity? Web 3.
I haven't read as much articles on it as I should, so I'm not the Web 3 guy. But from my understanding, the thing is moving away from SQL databases, because the world and websites are all powered by SQL databases. So in the future, where they're no longer relying on these databases, and SQL is like a central database of information that produces the websites that you visit, that you frequent, and represents and fabricates the user experiences of the website. With that, Web3 things are going to be producing without those databases. So there's no centralization of data. And that is what the rudimentary understanding of Web3 that I have and how it's going to be impactful to the internet that we love.
I look at this problem, sometimes I think about it in the big picture, and it just seems like an impossible task to secure our supply chains, to secure our government.
There's the cocktail. Creating these security problems for our country. I think, personally, in my opinion, I just want to put on the record that this is my opinion, and hopefully that's the reason why you're listening. But
and it does not necessarily reflect the opinion of Petronella Technology Group. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I want to hear this.
I think it's a combination of negligence, ignorance, of course, the rapidly advancing technology and the digital push of everybody adapting and trying to create a digital presence, and everybody trying to go online, everybody trying to make money on the internet, that ultimately they think about being able to reach their customers easier through the internet. I just think that whole cocktail, it definitely lets cybersecurity and fortification back with the background of their actions, because they're always stuck in that cocktail and we just can't keep up.
I think also included in that cocktail could be a bit of the culture of the United States, and how I feel like just because we have freedom and rights doesn't mean that we necessarily have freedom from outcomes, right? So you make a choice, you make a decision to go online. You are free to do that, but just know if you do it and you're not secure, you run the risk of financial ruin. That sounds kind of fear-mongering, and I don't mean it to be, but we don't have freedom from our consequences.
It's such a problem, especially now with the ever-growing evolution of web. The digital world has created these mega personalities, online celebrities, social influencers, YouTube influencers, bloggers. With the rise of the internet has created this mega celebrity status, and people aspire to be rich. People aspire to be famous, but kind of like what you were saying is people can look at these people, and these people can get away with anything. These people can get away with anything at all because they're a celebrity.
Yeah.
They don't have to answer to the laws that bound the world for the most part. And you start to see justice happening more so now, more ever. And I'm going to be the most stereotypical or reference the most high profile. But if we look at people like Jeffrey Epstein or R. Kelly, or these cases that were developing for such long periods of time, and because they were influential people, they didn't have to worry about the laws, bound and control and keep the world safe. They didn't live by those rules.
And they were allowed to get away with this stuff for decades. I think that because of all this freedom of information is being allowed on social media and on the internet, which sounds great in theory, but then when in actuality, oh my goodness, people just believe whatever they see, but then they don't believe other things.
Yeah.
You can pick and choose what you think, even if this is completely irrational and illogical and makes no sense, furthers my narrative. This is something that I believe in, so I'm going to believe it. And I think that kind of goes along with what you were saying a little bit.
I think it's scary.
It is really scary.
I think it's scary the way that people are evolving and the way that the security is evolving. I definitely think it's scary. People aren't serious humans anymore. You can look at internet culture. If something happens in the world, what does America do? We meme it to death.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of progress to make up. I think we have a lot of minds to hopefully change, a lot of people to influence. because we need progress. If we stand here and fail to move forward, then whatever's chasing us is going to catch up to us. But as we continue to progress and advance and move forward, of course, I'm talking about in cybersecurity or life or whatever. The second that you stop progressing is the second that you start to lose your position. And that can be anything.
No, I agree with that completely. Everything takes so much time. Everything is so slow. But around us in the digital world, it's advancing more quickly than it ever has in the history. I don't think that we're going to be able to keep up or stay ahead unless we cut back on some of the fat, cut out the bloating, get rid of this water weight. There's just so much extra unnecessary that we have. And I think that we need to be able to move more quickly. And one thing that BJ said to me once that really made a lot of sense, or really got me thinking, why in the world is everybody not using something like Blue Shift? Why is the government not using this service? I just don't understand it. They have to know about it. And why isn't it more prevalent? Why isn't it known? I don't get it. It's such an amazing thing. I feel like it should just be standard at this point. The more that an AI cybersecurity SOC SIM solution is learning, the more it's going to be able to protect. The more data it gathers, the better off we're going to be. I don't understand how it's not more prevalent.
They're defensive minded. They're not offensive minded. They're not seeking the future. They're living in the present
or the past.
Yeah. The worst thing that I've ever heard, in my opinion, because I'm this type of person, but it's something that people say that I hate. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
That is a really great point, because that is such a reactive mindset as opposed to a proactive mindset.
Yeah. Just because it's not broke doesn't mean that you can't be exploring other alternatives. If you go to the same fishing hole every single day and never explore another fishing hole, you're only going to catch the same type of fish. You can still utilize what works without it being broken. But look at all the new technology that happens. If every technology company, Apple, Samsung, LG, any of these companies said, oh, well, we have this technology that works, let's not improve it, then we wouldn't have the technology we have today. We wouldn't have Blue Shift. We wouldn't have HDR. We wouldn't have 4K. We wouldn't have OLED displays, or we wouldn't have
Spotify.
Yeah, we wouldn't have Spotify. We would still be downloading music through LimeWire or Napster.
Cassette tapes. No. We'd still have cars eating our cassette tapes. You probably didn't have to deal with that, Blake. You're a little bit younger than me. Or records with scratches on them.
Yeah. No MP3 players, or who knows?
We'd still be sitting in a cave, starting fires and eating roots and berries and an occasional rabbit.
Yeah, there'd be no such thing as a lighter. I'd still be using matches.
Yeah.
So that needs to be the forefront of every business evolution. Everybody who's listening to our podcast is likely a business owner. They likely have some type of product or service or something. And they're always continuing to improve it. They're always continuing to make it more efficient. They're always continuing to advance it, to make it better, to make it more useful, to make it more cutting edge, make it more user-friendly, or whatever it is that they're pushing for. And the second that you stop doing that in your life, in your business, in your cybersecurity, is the second you're going to get surpassed, or in this case, breached or hacked or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think that was a really strong, impactful point, and I think probably a good one to leave off of. I think you really hit the nail on the head, and I think we really got to the roots of the problem here in the United States. Really, what it boils down to is that we're reactive as opposed to proactive.
You certainly can't win a game with only defensive players, and you certainly can't win a game with only offensive players.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have a mixture of reactive and proactive minds, and we just need to be unleashed into this world. And if maybe we started conditioning society to think about security, we may have children that may be considering security. That's being optimistic, but I think it was one of my nephews or one of my nieces or something. When my grandpa was there asking one of my nieces or nephews what he wanted to be when he grew up. And he said he wanted to be an app developer. I was like, what? I could never see that because in my generation, I was like, I want to be a zookeeper or I want to be an astronaut. Yeah, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an airplane pilot. Like, those are the things that come to mind for me. It can't be that difficult. Why are we putting this off? Why aren't we doing this? It can't be that challenging to start to condition our children to think about cybersecurity. It's the same way we say, hey, don't talk to strangers. We teach our children about physical security, but not digital security. Why is that?
I hate to necessarily bring this up, but it was just what popped into my mind. After 9/11, we started getting serious about airport security, about bringing things onto planes, because we all didn't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to have to stand in line for an extra hour so that you can check my shoes. I would love it if my friends or family could come pick me up again at the actual gate and you can get off the plane and see happy, smiling faces. That was so nice. We enjoyed that. But after 9/11, we realized, okay, but is the safety of thousands of Americans worth seeing smiling faces at the gate? And we decided it wasn't. And I think that something similar is going to have to happen. Hopefully not, I say that, hopefully not on such a large scale and such a terrible scale, right? But I think it's going to take something like that to kind of wake people up and make them realize what could happen. Because right now it's all theoretical of the things that could happen. Again, we were talking to Dwight about what if they shut down the power supply somewhere or did something. Oh gosh, there's just so many things that could happen. But until something actually happens, I don't think it's going to be taken seriously.
It already has happened. Look at the Equifax. I keep referencing this. Look at the Equifax. Your social security number is on the internet right now. You're likely lucky enough that they haven't tried to use your security number to open a card because there's tens of millions of social security numbers on the
That's also something that happens, though, on an individual basis. It happens to a lot of people, but it's an individual thing. So if you look at the Colonial Pipeline, like we talked about, that was on a massive scale comparatively. And I think that it would take a tragedy, which hopefully does not occur, but it would take a tragedy on a massive scale here in the United States for people to be like, okay, I guess we really need to get serious about this. Right now, at this point, I think there is one person in Germany who passed away from a successful ransomware attack at a hospital. And that's just not enough to wake people up, unfortunately.
I think 143 million social security numbers being breached is a massive scale.
No, it is. Yes, it is. But the consequences of that are seen on an individual basis.
For sure. They haven't been felt because those hackers haven't rummaged through those 143 million social security numbers and opened a credit card. They haven't gone that far. The chances of you being picked are 1 in 143 million. So yeah, it hasn't been felt on a large scale like the Colonial Pipeline attack, but it's really a shame that we have to have such a tragic event happen to start to be proactive, to start realizing that we live and we are a reactive society and not a proactive society. It's a shame.
It is a shame. I hate saying that. I don't want something like that to happen. I don't want it to take that for people to see the potential negatives that can happen. That's a terrible thing. But I think that that's the only thing that's going to happen that can actually change us at a base level to make it so that we are like, wait a minute, okay, these people on the PDD podcast were right. We need to take this seriously.
We're going to be like that dude that was hyping Bitcoin 10 years ago. Like, hey, if you buy one Bitcoin.
Oh God, if I had done that.
But yeah, we might be those people that seem crazy now, but when time progresses, we may be prophets.
It feels inevitable, doesn't it, Blake? Doesn't it feel inevitable?
It does.
I just want people to take it seriously. It has to happen.
It has to happen. And in due time, we figure these things out for better or for worse. So I am optimistic that this will happen.
Yeah.
I just want it to happen faster.
And proactively instead of reactively. I don't want it to be something that we do because something massively tragic happens. I'd rather prevent that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure.
But then the other problem with that is that if you do prevent it, then people are going to be like, well, what's the point? Because nothing happened. Well, nothing happened. That's a good thing.
We don't need any more tragedies to happen. We can look at the past 2 years of COVID and say, hey, look, we weren't proactive enough.
People still don't think it's anything besides the flu.
People still don't feel like it's a reason to wear masks on the airplane.
Yep. It's hard not to get political sometimes. I don't even think of this as political, though. It's been turned political, but it shouldn't have been turned political.
Yeah, we should probably end it before we start ranting.
Blake and I are on the same page with a lot of things, so we should probably not feed off each other on this podcast. Well, Blake, I know it's just the two of us, but I think that was a good discussion. So thank you for finding the time to come on. And
yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Well, have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. For other episodes and more information, visit petronellatech.com. Also visit our other websites, compliancearmor.com and blockchainsecurity.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and stay secure.